As we all know, Larry died in the meat locker at the dairy. He got his head smashed in by Kenny. But what if Kenny never smashed his head? What if Larry really was still alive and could be rescued? What if Larry survived? First thing we need to think of is the way he could have survived. Well, I think the answer to that is pretty obvious. Make the choice in the meat locker actually matter? If you help Lee revive Larry, Kenny will hesitate, and Larry will be reanimated by CPR. Of course, I'm not saying this choice doesn't change anything. It does, but it's mostly dialogue. In this scenario, it would change the game. Larry would be alive, and that's where we start our theory. Larry is alive, weakened, and in shock, but alive. What would change if Larry survived this scene? Well, firstly, it would change Kenny's behavior. In the game, if you side with Lily, he hates you. He was sure Larry was dead. But here, it turns out he was still alive. Instead of hating Lee, he would feel guilty. He would still argue it was logical to assume he was dead, but would feel guilty nonetheless. Instead of looting Larry's corpse to find coins, he would just ask him to give them to you. I also see some dialogue options, asking him how he feels and is everything alright. Here we would see for the first time Larry not being an ass to Lee, rather responding to him like a normal person. He would not necessarily respect Lee, however he would answer his questions normally. After escaping the meat locker, Lily would stay back with Larry and Clem. Larry needs to catch a breath, and Clem would be safe from them. Another different scene would be when we get the choice to kill Danny. If we did, Clem would get scared, of course. Larry, however, would tell Lee he did the right thing for once. I don't see any dialogue later when we get the choice to kill Andy. I just see Larry standing there with the rest of the group silently. So when we get to the station wagon, Larry could again become an ass. If we decide not to take the supplies, Larry would tell Lee he cannot eat them if he wants to, but the rest of them would rather survive than starve to death, because someone can possibly come back here and starve to death instead of them. They are the priority. He then would demand Lee to give him a key, and take it from him angrily. In episode 3 I don't see much changes, at least up until you come back to the motel with Kenny. You will get the chance to talk with Larry. I see at least 3 options at first. Asking him if he feels better. Larry would answer he does and doesn't need Lee's pity over him. Though he is a little bit glad he saved his life, but he's still a killer, and he for damn sure ain't gonna trust him anytime soon. Second option would be asking him what he thinks about leaving the motel. I believe he would side with Lily on this one, but say he would leave if they absolutely had to. The third would consist of Lee asking Larry about the bandit raids. In the game we see arrows and bullet holes, but we don't get any details of what actually happened. Larry would say those parasites keep coming back to get their asses kicked, that even an animal, no, it doesn't stand a chance, that he's fine with killing them. Their bows and arrows don't fucking scare him. If we asked him about the flashlight, he would say he didn't do it and to go bother someone else. When asked about the chalk, he'd say Clem has some if Lee wants to act like a baby and play with it for a while. During the raid itself, I could see him on the side where Dak and Katya were sitting behind the cover. He would make it to the RV and Katya would still be attacked like in the game. The group would escape. During the argument in the RV, I see Larry siding with Lily yet again, though he would acknowledge his daughter starts to lose it a bit. When Lily shoots Dak, or Carly depending on who you saved before. If we picked to abandon Lily, Larry would stay back with her, but he would be shocked. His son just killed someone, one of their own, in cold blood. If we let her stay, however, that's when things would get really interesting. I could just say Lily would steal the RV with Larry and escape, but it's a bit boring, don't you think? That's why I had another idea. Lily would actually abandon Larry and steal the RV by herself. She realized she lost it. She knows her father doesn't know what to think of her anymore, so she drives off, alone. For a second, I want to stop here. I want to talk about the biggest problem with Larry's character. Larry was an asshole, I agree, but he was an asshole because Telltale made him one, not because we made him one. And let me explain what I mean by that. The best example is Kenny and Lily. Whichever you side with likes you. The other becomes an asshole. A lot of people I met hate Kenny because he was an asshole to them in season 2 and 1. Why? Because they disagreed with him. And people I met who hate Lily hate her because they didn't agree with her. See what I mean? We made those characters unlikable by our actions, our choices, not because Telltale forced them onto us. It's not the same with Larry. If we side with him in the pharmacy, he still leaves us to die. Why? It would be better if he just let us escape, not punch us in the damn face. It would make our choices matter. In episode 2, if we not give him food, or give him the axe or not, he still is an asshole to us. Nothing changes. That's why I like Lily/Kenny dynamic in this season. The thing is, by the time Lily's gone, it's pretty much gone too. From episode 4 onward, Kenny treats you the same no matter what you did in previous episodes. Aside from this brief moment in episode 4 where he can go, or he cannot go with you to save Clem, but with Larry making it to the train, and Lily gone, you can keep this dynamic going, and instead of Lily, with Larry. When our groups makes it to the train and starts it off, Katya would ask Lily to talk to Kenny, to stop the train. They would comment on this, and say Kenny is too dense to even realize his own son is dying. They would do that, and everything would go on the same. When we kill Dak out of mercy, and are back in the train, we would have a chance to talk to Larry. We would ask him what he thinks about Lily. He would say this time he has to be honest, he never expected this. Not only did she murder someone, one of their own, in cold blood, but also abandoned him. He doesn't know what to think. We'd also have a chance to let him know Chuck's got some booze. And it wouldn't change anything, but I think it would be a nice little detail. After all, we can do that to Kenny and tell him Chuck's got some booze and drink with Chuck, so I believe Larry could use it too. When Ben admits to Lee that he was the one giving out the supplies to the bandits, Lee would tell him to keep it to himself, not only because of Kenny, but Larry too, because unlike Kenny, they can't hold off Larry that easily. When we meet Omid and Krista, Larry would be suspicious, just like the rest of the group. When we get the choice to tell them either about Kenny, Ben or Chuck, we would also have a choice to tell them about Larry instead. We would tell them that his daughter killed someone in cold blood and then abandoned him. Up until the end of episode 4, I don't see much more happening with Larry at least. When the group is walking through the streets of Savannah to make it to the boats, and Krista says Omid needs to rest, Larry for the first time in history side with Kenny and say they can't stop moving, that he can rest on the boat. When the horde awakens, Larry will be okay. I mean, you saw the guy, you really see Walker overpower him. He would make it to the house and yell at Ben for almost letting Clem die. This would show that he cares about her. It was implied in the game, but never shown. Here we would see it. Lee could either tell Larry to back off, side with him, and yell at Ben, or not intervene, in which case Krista would stop the argument. He would hang out with Omid and Krista, as the rest checks out the house for walkers. Not much would happen with him until Crawford. He would go there too with the rest of the group, and if Lee brought Clem, he would comment on how stupid this is. I could see him probably helping Ben with the armor door. When Ben admits to giving away supplies, he would be angry, but not attack Ben. Not because he got soft, but because there are walkers literally just outside the fucking door. He would vote against Ben to leave him behind. If we do save Ben, he would tell Lee that this was a mistake. When Lee gets beaten, Larry could go with Lee to save Clem. How, you may ask? Well, there were 3 main chances that revolved around him: argument in the pharmacy, the meat locker incident, and Lee's fate. Since 2 out of 3 of those are required for him to even be here in the first place, it's pretty simple. If you side with him in the pharmacy, he goes with you. If you didn't, he doesn't. There would be a plot hole as to how cancer survivors would overpower him, but there is no game without plot holes, am I right? So I think it would be okay. If Larry went with Lee, he would be the one to amputate his arm, if we chose to do it. But only if Krista isn't there. If she is, she always does it. I think she even always does it in the game, too. When the group makes it to the roof, you would get a chance to talk to Larry, and here, you would see something no one expected. Larry would tell Lee that he was wrong about him. That now, when he sees how much he sacrificed for Clem and the rest of them, he was wrong. and that he's sorry. Imagine Larry actually apologizing to Lee. I mean, that would be awesome. Larry would make it back to the house, too. When walkers start getting inside the house and the group has its back forced into a wall, I could see Larry helping the group and shoot the walkers because of his military background, but because we never saw him with a gun in the game, I'll just assume he just stayed there because he didn't have a gun. He would make it on top and help Omid and Kenny break the wall to the other apartment. When we come to the roof jump though, that's where I see his end. Instead of Kenny jumping second to last, or last, depending on Ben's fate, he would jump before Larry. Larry would fall and die instantly, and if Ben is still alive, he would have no way to jump onto the roof and would be left behind in the apartment. The group would be against it, leaving his fate unknown, making his character determinant instead of always dying in the game, and Kenny would sacrifice himself for Krista, as if Ben was dead. And that's where we end our theory. That's pretty much all the ideas I had. Larry might have been an ass, but for me, he is an underrated character, and had a lot of potential. So that's why I think he should have stayed longer in the game. And that's what I think would have happened if Larry survived.